Hey there, it's Gary Parrish. Welcome back to the CBS Sports Eye on College Basketball Podcast, where we sometimes discuss camel fighting, dodo birds, and leaky black. The Eye on College Basketball Podcast. It is presented by Jersey Mike's Subs. Jersey Mike's a sub above. Matt Norlander is here with me. He's at home in Connecticut. I'm in a hotel room in New York City. If you're watching on YouTube, smash the like button like you're Brandon Davies. You have consent. And if you haven't yet subscribed to the CBS Sports College Basketball YouTube channel, please do that while you're here. Okay, let's get into it. The biggest story of the past 24 hours is Alabama star Brandon Miller's involvement in an incident that resulted in the death of a 23-year-old mother named Jamia Harris. For those unfamiliar, here's the deal. Let me catch you up on where we're at. Last month, former Alabama player Darius Miles and his friend, a guy named Michael Davis, they were charged with capital murder. Miles' gun was the alleged murder weapon. Davis reportedly was the shooter. We've all known all of that since January 15th. Then, on Tuesday, just yesterday, we learned more, specifically that Brandon Miller, Alabama's five-star freshman, best player, is reportedly the person who brought the gun to the scene of the incident. That's what police detailed Tuesday in court. They testified that Darius Miles texted Brandon Miller to bring him his gun after he and Michael Davis had a run-in with Jamia Harris and her boyfriend. In the simplest of terms, it appears that Miles and Davis were trying to talk to Harris. She wasn't interested, told them she had a boyfriend. Then her boyfriend, a man named Cedric Johnson, reportedly told Miles and Davis, like, hey, it's time to move it along. And that's when Miles reportedly told Miller to bring him the gun. He did. And then Michael Davis eventually got the gun, reportedly said to Cedric Johnson and Jamia Harris, quote, I told you I was going to get you. And then he started firing into the vehicle, at least 8 shots. One of them hit Jamia Harris in the face. Minutes later, she was dead. And now we know the gun that was used to kill her was brought to the scene by a projected first-team All-American for a projected number 1 seed in the 2023 NCAA tournament. Tuscaloosa Chief Deputy DA Paula Whitley, she was asked on Tuesday why Brandon Miller hasn't been charged with a crime. Seemed like a reasonable question. She said that there's nothing they could charge him with. Now, I'll let the lawyers determine whether that's true or false, but either way, there is literally nothing stopping Alabama as a school or a program from punishing Brandon Miller in some way. To date, the school and the program have at least publicly done nothing. And in some regrettable comments on Tuesday afternoon, Alabama coach Nate Oates chalked it all up to Brandon Miller simply being at the wrong place at the wrong time, which is obviously a ridiculous way to categorize this situation. Norlander, thank you for your patience, but I did think it was important to lay everything out before we discuss it further. Now, I've done that. So let me start you with this. First question. Are you surprised Brandon Miller has played 10 straight games, started 10 straight games since taking a gun to a place where it was used to kill a woman? And even if you aren't surprised, do you think it's appropriate?
Yeah, I'm not here for the cynicism. I am surprised, okay? And there's been a lot of this, oh, what did you expect to happen? It's Alabama. He's a first-round pick. He's a top 10 pick. He's a top 5 pick. He's the National Freshman of the Year front runner. No, I expect someone charged with leading a program like Nate Oates to take proper disciplinary action. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an expert in law in the state of Alabama. I'm not here to talk about whether or not Brandon Miller should have been charged in this. Can't speak to that with an expert legal mind. Not going to pretend to, not going there. But what I do know is everything that Parrish just laid out. Frankly, I've heard from many coaches, assistants and head coaches at the power conference level in the past, however many hours this has been since this broke, that the question everyone is asking is, how did Brandon Miller and Jaden Bradley not serve a suspension? And is he really actually going to play tonight? And I was told by a source, I haven't talked to Nate Oates, but I was told by a source that as of this hour, yeah, the expectation is that Brandon Miller will be available for Alabama's game on Wednesday night. Oates followed up with a statement after, a bad choice of words. They're at South Carolina. It's as nondescript of a conference game in the SEC as Alabama could possibly have this season. Frankly, why not just you've taken a lot of L's here. Why not just take the easy win and just not play him? But that's a discussion for another time. Maybe that changes by the end of the evening. Maybe it doesn't. I don't know. But with all of the details there, the thing that just doesn't sit right after the fact is that quite clearly Oates, Alabama athletic director Greg Byrne, school president, board of regents, enough people in power had to have known the details here, because Miller's car had bullet holes in it, his windshield. He drove to the scene. There are still, I read all the reports I could read that came out of this yesterday. There are still a few things that need further explanation, but it appears as though while Miller was around the scene, he wasn't actually at the scene when it happened. It appears that way. The testimony under oath did not indicate that Miller was in the presence of this, and even one of the law enforcement officers said under oath that Miller did not see the actual shooting, the exchange of gunfire take place. Even learning more of these details, we have a woman, a mother, dead in this, and it's kind of a shock that there wasn't at least one more. I mean, this is apparently I've never been to Tuscaloosa, but this is a very busy part of the downtown area, relatively close to the football stadium, and this is a horrific situation that could have been much worse. I just don't understand why Oates and that program didn't opt to do the right thing and have some disciplinary action. If you just take it on its face, Miller receives a text message from his then teammate asking him to come on back downtown and using language that would indicate he's asking him to bring his gun. And it's, 1 a.m. What common sense has got to apply here. And again, this is completely separate with whether or not Miller has been charged, should be charged. It's separate from that. It is. Did Alabama review this and determine if Brandon Miller and Jaden Bradley violated simple code of conduct rules at the university? This isn't a violation of that. This wouldn't trigger any kind of suspension. And I've also seen a little bit of, well, this is clearly not Nate Oates' decision. Well, even if for whatever reason the people above Nate Oates' head decided that, we don't think that you absolutely have to discipline these two players, he's still the head coach of the program. He just got a major extension a few weeks after this happened within the past month. He can still make the ultimate decision to say, no, I want to do the right thing. It looks so much worse after the fact that all of these details come out with Brandon Miller's involvement in this. If he does not do this, it is not unthinkable. It seems relatively possible that this woman's life isn't taken. He brings the actual gun to the scene because it wasn't there to begin with. It's genuinely infuriating. And I'm not here for Alabama fans trying to justify this. Go ahead, GP.
If you don't have a rule in your program, to speak to the lack of punishment so far, that covers something along the lines of, hey, you're not allowed to drive around late at night, middle of the night with a loaded gun in your car. Like if you don't have a rule that something like that would fall under, then what kind of program are you running? It is outrageous that Brandon Miller has not been at least disciplined in some way, suspended in some way. And I think you could make a pretty compelling argument that he shouldn't be a member of the basketball program at all anymore. He did quite literally bring a gun to a scene that led to the death of a woman. It is not a stretch to suggest that if when he gets that text, he just texts back, no, I'll come pick you up. Let's just call it a night. Or no, I can't get involved in this situation. Just get a ride home and we'll talk about it when you get here. If he does any number of reasonable things, then this young woman, you can reasonably assume, is still alive. Instead, he made just about, if not clearly, the worst decision you can make, which is, hey, you guys have been out all night. Now you're in an altercation. Now you're asking me to bring you a loaded gun. Sure, I'll be there in a second. That's outrageous. Think about what basketball players and football players are suspended for sometimes. Smoking weed, breaking curfew, skipping class. You're going to tell me bringing a loaded gun to an altercation and that loaded gun subsequently being used to shoot and kill a woman doesn't rise to the level of some sort of punishment? That's outrageous. And any Alabama fan out there trying to rationalize this, and there's a bunch of them, they're still arguing in my Twitter mentions right now. You are out of your mind, completely out of your mind. I love sports just like you love sports. I hope to God I never love any sports entity enough to make me so stupid when something like this pops up, because there are Alabama fans who I'm assuming are otherwise reasonable people who could not be twisting themselves in more ridiculous knots to try to rationalize why Brandon Miller is playing basketball with no interruption and still a member of this basketball team. And that press conference from Nate Oates on Tuesday afternoon was frankly embarrassing. And I say this as somebody who thinks Nate Oates is an unbelievable basketball coach, one of the best in the country. I respect him. I like him. I couldn't believe those words came out of his mouth. Wrong place, wrong time. What? No. Wrong place, wrong time is if you're at a party and you're minding your own business, you're having a good time, you're holding a drink, you're talking to whoever. And then over here on the other side of the room, something like this pops off. Bang, bang, bang. Wow. Now you are wrong place in the wrong time. You just having a good night and something wild happened in your vicinity. That's wrong place, wrong time. Brandon Miller wasn't in the wrong place at the wrong time. He helped create the wrong place. He enhanced the wrong place. He brought the gun to the place, which immediately turned it into the wrong place, wrong time for a lot of other people who were out in Tuscaloosa that night. But Brandon Miller was not wrong place, wrong time. He didn't just happen to be somewhere where gunfire erupted. He brought the gun that led to the gunfire erupting. And there is also reports that his car blocked the vehicle of Cedric Johnson and Jamia Harris in a way that almost sounds like a mob hit or something you would see in a movie.
That doesn't make sense to me, though, because eventually that car leaves the street. So I'm not going to speak to the logistics of that, because GP, if that actually was the case, if there was clear intent there, then he would have been charged. I mean, this is very, very common sense. But regardless, his vehicle was in the vicinity, and then it wound up having 2 bullets hit its windshield.
Again, the report is that his car was blocking this other vehicle. Whether it was intentional or not is unclear. I have no idea, but it certainly doesn't sound great. And yeah, I don't know how this can be just swept to the side the way the Alabama athletic department just tried to sweep it to the side. Again, there's a long list of basketball players and football players who have been suspended for far less than carrying a gun to an altercation and then having that gun be used in what is now an alleged murder, in the shooting death of a young mother that left a 5-year-old little boy without his mom. And it is embarrassing that Alabama has just kept playing Brandon Miller without any interruption. And the one thing I'm certain of, absolutely certain of, is if the player who did this averaged 2 points a game instead of 19, he wouldn't be on this team right now. Absolutely not. Brandon Miller better be glad he's an All-American, because if he weren't, he wouldn't be on this team right now. Yeah, and I'll take it a step further. If it was another teenage African-American man who wasn't a star basketball player, I can't say for certain, but it wouldn't surprise me if he would actually be charged with a crime right now.
Yeah, there's a child out there that's not going to have a mom growing up. Jamia Harris isn't here, and it is sickening how avoidable this whole situation was, how unnecessary this whole situation was. You know, I'll speak to the bigger picture too as well. Paris mentioned this on a couple episodes back. Like, college basketball has been affected in many ways by gun violence throughout this season. Some of it unrelated to anyone on any given program. We just saw in a very emotional, cathartic moment happen Tuesday night at the Breslin Center with Michigan State. We'll get to that in a little bit. But, there's the New Mexico State situation, which was a litany of things. But the first major headline of the season to come out of that program was a player bringing a gun to a situation in which he was lured under the false pretense of potentially meeting a young woman, but he had enough sense to know that it might not be right, so he brought a gun and then in self-defense and in retreat shot and killed a person. And now you have this situation on Nate Oates. I almost wonder if he went out of body, because it was so bizarre of a statement on Tuesday in the press conference. Like, he had to know this was coming. They knew the trial was happening. The preliminary trial was happening. He said they said a prayer for the young woman, Jamea Harris, but wrong place, wrong time. Can't control what happens outside of practice. It was mind-boggling. He did offer a follow-up statement, which I still feel fell way short. Still way short, but I'm going to read it. Because it was a statement that was put out on Tuesday night. Short, here it is. I thought it was important for me to clarify the unfortunate remarks I made earlier. This entire time, I've tried to be thoughtful in my words relative to this tragic incident, and my statements came across poorly. We were informed by law enforcement of other student athletes being in the vicinity, and law enforcement has repeatedly told us that no other student athletes were suspects. They were witnesses only. Our understanding is that they have been fully truthful and cooperative. In no way did I intend to downplay the seriousness of this situation or the tragedy of that night. My prayers continue to go out to Jamea Harris's family. That was his statement. There should have been much, much more, directly referencing the status and why it has been and apparently still is with Bradley and with Miller. This is a major failure of leadership, and it reflects poorly on Oates, obviously, on Bama, obviously, on the sport, obviously. But can we just have a bit more accountability? This is not players sneaking out in the middle of the night, breaking curfew to just do something like, harmless but nefarious, and then maybe it's a little bit of a story. This is literally life and death. Someone got killed. What are we doing here? They didn't disclose it from the start, and they would have been in a much better situation right now had they been more forthcoming, particularly because Jaden Bradley and Brandon Miller have not been charged. They are not suspects. They are not subject to an ongoing trial. If that is the case, you can offer more transparency. Continuing to hide behind word salad statements only make it worse for you as a program. The AD and Nate Oates still have more to atone for and to answer to.
If I were at Alabama in charge of something, I would say, okay, we messed this up. How do we make it better from this point? We can't undo what we've done, but how do we make it better from this point? And I would release a statement or hold a press conference today and say, just like the rest of you, we learned some things in Tuesday's testimony that we didn't previously know. And we are now compelled to hold Brandon Miller out of competition until, frankly, we can figure out exactly how we need to handle this situation. It wouldn't be great, but it'd be better than doing nothing. Because, again, as you noted, as I've noted, players are suspended all the time for stuff that doesn't even rise anywhere close to this level. Players get held out of games for smoking weed, for sneaking out, for all sorts of, relatively speaking, minor things. Brandon Miller took a loaded gun to a place, and that gun was minutes later used to kill a woman. That's got to be a violation of some sort of policy in your program. Otherwise, I don't know what kind of program you're running. And it struck me yesterday, and you mentioned Nate's press conference, which was just, even the language was just bad. Everything about it was bad. The words, the visual, everything was bad. It just sort of struck me yesterday. I talked about this on TV at least 3 different times yesterday. But before I said a word on TV, there was literally a team of people sitting together saying, okay, how do we talk about this given what we know without speculating too much? What would you say if you were asked this question? What would you say if you were asked that question? How would you discuss this? We went over it probably for 20 minutes, making sure everybody who was going to speak about this on national television understood the facts of the case, the details of the case, and understood what was reasonable to say and where a line that might be too far is drawn. It appears that my bosses were more concerned about what I might say about this than Nate Oates' bosses were about what he might say about this, which seems absolutely insane. It appears that I had more detailed conversations with higher ups about how I would discuss this situation publicly than Nate Oates did with his higher ups. And if that's not true, then I don't know what his higher ups were telling him, because that was a obviously embarrassing demonstration from him yesterday. And again, I say that as somebody who likes Nate, but I mean, what happened yesterday happened yesterday. I had people just like you, coaches, assistants, reaching out. And not one of them was like, there was actually somebody who called me who is close with Nate. I think they would consider themselves friends. And I swear to God, when I saw the name pop up on my phone, I was like, oh God, because I'm getting ready to go on TV. And this is what I thought. You get these calls all the time too, I'm certain. I thought it was going to be somebody close with Nate calling to say, hey, GP, what you don't understand is, hey, what you need to understand, or like, let me tell you what the situation Nate's in. And so I answered the call just because, I'm going to answer the call, but I was expecting that. And you know what I got instead? Are we off the record? Of course. What the F is Nate doing? What are they doing at Alabama? How is Brandon Miller not suspended? That came from a coach, from a person who is like friendly with Nate Oates. I think the coaching community, and I recognize it's easier for everybody to say what they would do when it's not them. But I didn't hear from a single coach who said, yeah, Brandon Miller should still be playing without any interruption. He didn't do anything wrong. People were like, what in the world was Brandon Miller doing? Particularly as a projected lottery pick worth millions of dollars. Like, to be clear, any college basketball player should not return that text, certainly should not respond to it in the way that Brandon Miller responded. It's reckless and foolish no matter who you are, student athlete or not. But it's especially crazy when you're a projected lottery pick worth millions of dollars and thus with more to risk than your average student, because this is now going to impact his NBA draft status. I don't know that it's the type of thing that's going to take him from being the 3rd pick to the 13th pick to the 23rd pick or anything like that. At some point, somebody's going to say he's too talented. We're just going to chalk it up to one poor decision. But these are questions he's going to have to answer. And NBA executives are going to have to determine, is this just a good young man who made a very poor decision? A good young man who is perhaps more impressionable than we would like him to be, but still at his core, not this kind of guy? Or are they have to determine this guy's about this lifestyle, and that is representative of who he is. And if that is representative of who he is, he'll get a text message saying, bring me a loaded gun, and he'll just show up with the loaded gun. Well, then we got to be careful using a top 5, top 10, top 15 pick on somebody like that, investing millions of dollars. Who are we spending this pick on? Who are we investing this money in? I want to be clear. From this seat, I'm not comfortable making that declaration. I don't know Brandon Miller like that. He may be the best young man in the world who made just a stupid choice, or perhaps he's something different than that. I do not know. But I do know that NBA franchises, they will spend the next few months trying to figure that out, because this is going to be the main thing connected to how he's evaluated by NBA franchises in advance of the 2023 NBA draft.
Yeah, I think we've covered pretty much everything. I don't know if this is impacting, it shouldn't be, but I don't know if this is impacting the flow of this story. Again, if you're watching right now live, we appreciate you. In this hour, Brandon Miller is expected to be available tonight. That might not change. That might change. We've got a lot of hours to go before that game tips in Columbia, South Carolina. There's a number of people with the NCAA in Houston, or have been in Houston this week for a Final Four site review. When that happens, members of the selection committee also often will take those trips. I don't know if Greg Bird's on that trip or not, but isn't to say he can't do his job when he's not with the team. But not seeing them face to face, if that has even been the case, I don't have that verified. That might also be a reason why our failure to quicker action is the case. But we'll see on it. Disappointing story all around, and as eye-opening of a thing as we've seen, I would say in some time. But frankly, we've had a few other pretty atrocious stories in the sport this season.
If there are new developments, we'll let you know about them just as soon as we can. But for now, let's move on. Texas A&M beat Tennessee on Tuesday night to improve to 13-2 in the SEC. Nobody has turned a season around this season better than Buzz Williams. We're going to get into that next, but first, a word from our partners.
Never seen nothing like this before. Never seen nothing like this. It don't matter where you're from. Come on, come on, come on. 3, 2, 1, let's go. You can feel the madness. Never seen nothing like this before. Never seen nothing like this.
So Texas A&M beat Tennessee on Tuesday night to improve to 13-2 in the SEC. There is nobody in this country that has turned a season around quite like Buzz Williams has this season. Texas A&M started 6-5 with losses to Wofford and Murray State, both of which are outside of the top 200 of the net. Since then, the Aggies are 15-2. Beat Tennessee, beat Arkansas, beat Missouri twice, Auburn twice. Make sense of this Texas A&M season, Deadleg.
Just coming on strong late. Buzz Williams is they're tracking well at this point, and they've been able to overcome a non-conference that certainly didn't look like they were heading to the NCAA tournament, and not even the NIT at one point. But it's going to be A&M's going to be the 2 seed, and most likely will be the 2 seed in the SEC tournament. It is 1 game behind Alabama. It's not getting caught for the 2 seed. 3 games clear, and has performed well enough at this point where, yeah, it's done well. It's a good free. If you want like actual bare bones statistic stuff with this, A&M makes more free throws per game, about 19 than anyone in the country, and it attempts the second most per game, around 25 per contest. So it's good at getting to the line. We saw that again. Yeah, if you can speak to the actual game, it was rough. 68-63. It took 2.5 hours. We had 24, 34, 42 fouls in this.
Wade Taylor, I believe, if I remember from doing the highlight last night, was 16 of 17 from the free throw line.
Let me bring this up here. He did go. Yeah, he was 16 to 17. He had 25 points. Was the most important player on the floor. Had 4 steals as well. And there were like 27 reviews. Just, not a great watch. What can you say? But A&M, now having just lost twice since December 20th and gotten it done in SEC play, it's gonna go to the tournament. It's not a lock, but it's going there. At this point, the remaining schedule is at Mississippi State, at Ole Miss. We'll finish out at home against Alabama in College Station to wrap up the regular season schedule before SEC play. A&M has only made 2 tournaments since 2011. It went twice under Billy Kennedy, and both of those runs wound up with Sweet 16 appearances there. So this is not a program that we see in the bracket every single season. It did have a good run under Turgeon, and before Billy Gillespie got the Kentucky job, of course. Shouts to AC Law IV, podcast favorite for sure. But this is Buzz Williams's, first go of it. They actually had 13. They tie their program record for SEC wins, their all-time record back in the Southwest Conference days. They won 14 a couple of times. So they're poised to, at minimum, match their program best for most conference wins in a season. And it's not a spectacular team. They don't jump off the screen, but they get it done at both ends. And Buzz Williams is doing, eventually it's taken until year 4, and they just narrowly missed last season, but he's doing what he came to do when he left Virginia Tech to go back to A&M. And that was a telegraphed coaching move, if ever there was one. He brought Virginia Tech to 3 straight tournaments. Then he wanted to reboot and start anew. Now they're going to be dancing in the field. I don't know what seed they'll be because their resume is interesting. If they take a couple of weird losses, they'll be actually up for debate, but hard for me to see this team playing its way out of the field of 68.
Yeah, this is what Buzz does, or at least this is what Buzz has done at his past 2 jobs. Like, take over a bad situation at Virginia Tech, make it good. Take over a bad situation at A&M, now he's made it good. And like you said, really made it good last season. They got off to a rough start, but then played well in a pretty significant segment of the SEC, put themselves in a position to get an at-large bid. They just found themselves ultimately on the wrong side of the bubble. I mentioned on Sunday's episode like that I didn't have Texas A&M ranked, and the reason is because the entire body of work is not top 26 in the country. It's just not. It's why as recently as this weekend, like Jerry Palm had them in last 4 in.
Did crack that top 25 though. Thought that might happen. Number 25 in the AP poll.
Well, I jumped them up into there this morning, and the reason is because at some point. And I feel like 2 months is a pretty good point. You just have to recognize what this team is and not totally disregard what happened in November and early December, but place everything in proper context. Because like I said, Texas A&M started 6-5, lost to Wofford, Murray State, lost to a whatever Colorado team. And in that stretch, I don't know if you know this, at barttorvik.com, you can sort the data from like one date to the next. It's an amazing tool.
How you doing with that TourneyCast spot over there, by the way? You figured out?
I don't F with TourneyCast yet.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. Give me a minute. All right.
Okay.
Can't put too much on my plate all at once.
Okay. No, I'm fair enough.
Right now, I'm just sorting data one day to the next. So if you take that 11-game stretch to start the season, Texas A&M 6-5, ranked 90th in the country at Torvik. Since then, A&M is 15-2, and if you run the data from the day after the loss to Wofford, which is December 21st, if you run the data from that day to this day, it's 2 months worth of basketball. Texas A&M is the 6th best team in the country. Here's the rankings over the past 2 months, according to barttorvik.com. Number 1, Alabama. Number 2, Houston. Number 3, Purdue. Number 4, St. Mary's. Number 5, UCLA. And number 6, Texas A&M. So
Kansas isn't in that, huh?
Kansas is not in that. So I moved Texas A&M. I jumped them from unranked all the way up to number 18 in the top 25-1 because, yeah, the entire body of work isn't the 18th best in the country. That's why Texas A&M probably wouldn't be a top 5 seed in the NCAA tournament right now. But over the past 2 months, this has been one of the 6 best, certainly you can safely say top 10 teams in the country. And at some point, I've got to get a pretty good number next to their name. I did that this morning.
All right. So big picture, before we scoot around the other parts of the conference, how much confidence do you have, though? Like, blindly speaking, if we started this tournament tomorrow and A&M was on the 10 line, like, would you have much confidence in picking them to be the 7 seed? It's a good story in that they're getting there. Again, they're really good on the offensive boards. They get to the foul line a ton. But I've watched a few. I've probably seen A&M play like 5-6 times this season. I don't know. They're a solid team, but I almost feel like it's an indictment on the SEC a little bit that this is the team that is clearing away in second place in the conference.
I would, to answer your question, take them as a 10 over a 7, just blindly. Yes, I would do that because you'd be getting good value. A 7 seed is going to be, in that 25, 26, 27, 28 range in terms of ranking teams in the entire country. And there is data that suggests Texas A&M is a top 10 team for a 2-month stretch. You would be able to take what has for more than 2 months now been a better team than whoever would be your 7 seed right now. Yes, I'll take Texas. How about this? You ready? Just blindly, I'm going to go ahead and promise you. I don't even care where Texas A&M is seated or who they're playing. I'll take them in the first round.
Okay.
I'm loyal to Buzz Williams.
I'm holding you to it right now. No matter the team, no matter the seed,
no matter the.
Hey, find us on our Selection Sunday show. Get in this chat. There are definitely A&M fans that are going to be dialed into this. Hold him to. He's going to forget this by tomorrow. He's picking A&M no matter the team it's faced with first. Its first game, whether that's Dayton or anything. You're on the hook.
And hey, a week ago we were like, yeah, Texas A&M, Alabama to close the regular season, but that's not really going to be for the conference championship. Could be.
Not after the past 24 hours. I mean,
Yeah.
Seems possible. Certainly seems possible.
Not ruling anything out. All right. Some other notable developments from the past couple of nights. Kansas and Texas both improved to 11-4 in the Big 12. So they still sit tied atop the league standings. 3 games left to play. They'll play each other, regular season finale at the Moody Center. Marquette likely wrapped up a Big East title by winning at Creighton, which is an awesome win to go to Omaha and knock that out. And if you look at the remaining schedule, it looks like Marquette is in a really good place, not just to share a Big East title, but perhaps win it outright. Michigan State beat Indiana by 15 points. Spartans' first game back at the Breslin Center since 3 students were murdered on campus. San Diego State late last night on CBS Sports Network. If I look tired, it's because San Diego State kept me in the studio until about 1:45 in the morning. They stayed atop the Mountain West Conference standings with a 19-point win over Colorado State. Any thoughts on any of that or anything else from the past 2 nights?
We're starting at the Breslin Center. That was an emotional moment, and just a small dose of a dose of good news. It's really beyond secondary to what that community is still going through from a grieving process, but they played a game and it was a wonderful visual, the whiteout with the zone, and Michigan State, comfortable tournament team, Indiana, comfortable tournament team. And so for the context of the Big Ten standings, like, it didn't mean a ton. It actually, it really gave Northwestern a really healthy shot at finishing second, because now Indiana lost. It's got 7 league losses. Northwestern has 5. Still got some tough games ahead. It's not guaranteed, but for the context of just purely a Big Ten league race, Indiana losing benefited Northwestern's position. But Michigan State, just put on a wonderful game. And Tyson Walker had one of his 4 or 5 best games since joining this program. AJ Hogarth played well, and Tom Izzo was, understandably emotional throughout. That's who he is. I did catch his interview with Scott Van Pelt late last night as well, and Van Pelt basically teed him up by saying, Van Pelt, by the way, a podcast listener. Thank you, SVP, as always. Teed him up by saying, you've done so much for that community in the past week. What did they do for you tonight? And he basically said they showed me a lot of love, and this feels like they showed a lot of people a lot of love during Izzo's speech at the vigil a week ago. He implored everyone to look around and shake the hands and really get to know 2 or 3 people around them that they just didn't know, and to kind of bring the community closer. And so I think a lot of that spirit and a lot of that ethos was in the building. And so Michigan State got a really good win, but there are much bigger things than that. But this was, technically, it was just the first win that the program got since the tragedy happened. And it felt like it was just a small step forward in an ongoing grieving process that won't stop anytime soon. There are still people in critical condition, still victims in the hospital. Some thankfully have been upgraded to stable, but some still have not. And so they are still literally fighting for their lives as we talk about this on the podcast.
It was a really beautiful scene, largely because of the crowd, the whiteout, but also because of Indiana's participation in it. I thought it was awesome that coach and staff to be wearing Spartan Strong gear, and really being a part of what was an emotional and special night inside the Breslin Center. So I hope Michigan, and I'm certain they are, Michigan State fans are appreciative of Mike Woodson and his staff and that Indiana program participating in the way that they did, because they made it an even, I think, more special experience from basketball perspective. Yeah, those are 2 teams that are going to play in the NCAA tournament. I don't know how far either one of them will go, but that wasn't a situation where it was high stakes from a bubble perspective. They'll both hear their names called on Selection Sunday. On the Big 12 thing, it starts with Kansas on Monday night, winning at TCU as a 3.5-point underdog. And I really do think that, and maybe I'm just in my own little bubble, but that was the night where people started to go, hold up, do you realize what Bill Self is doing?
I feel like we've said this for us, that is a bubble, because we've been saying this for 6 weeks, and maybe keep going, GP, but I almost feel like what Kansas did on Monday and then Marquette borderline locking up the 1 seed in the Big East tournament. Now people might be like, wow, maybe this team can go to the Final Four. With Kansas, people are saying like, are they real? Might this team actually repeat? We've been telling you it's extremely on the table as rare as the achievement is.
Yeah, like all I know is like I woke up on Tuesday morning and HQ was asking me about it, and I had radio stations, asking me about it. And yes, it's our job we have to talk about this stuff for roughly 3 hours a week in podcast form, and so we've touched on it. Feels like a million times at this point, but it seemed like it finally broke through then. Like, do you realize Bill Self lost 4 of his top 5 scores, 6 of his top 8 scores, 2 first-round NBA draft picks, and still has a team that's 14-5 in quadrant 1 with 0 additional losses? They have 4 more quad 1 wins than anybody else in the country. Texas is second with 10, and Kansas and Texas are, not coincidentally, the 2 teams that are competing for the Big 12 title. What's interesting is that Kansas does have way more quad 1 wins than anybody else, and that is among the reasons some Kansas fans think Kansas should be ranked number 1. If you want to rank Kansas number 1, it is fine with me. I actually think in terms of body of work, you can make a case right now for Kansas, for Alabama, for Houston, and yes, for Purdue as well. Again, when focusing on entire body of work, at this point, you could reasonably have those 4 schools in basically any order, but it should be noted that Kansas is still 6th in the net, 7th at KenPom, not really number 1 in any of the computers that we ever reference. So if you're somebody who maybe has Kansas 3rd or 4th instead of 1st or 2nd, well, then that's the thing you would point to rationalize that. Either way, this is not normal to lose as much as he lost from a national champion. And like, it's not like they enrolled at a Herald recruiting class, but like Grady Dick's the only one making a big impact. I mean, this is basically Grady Dick, 5-star freshman,
Grady Dick,
Kevin McCullough, transfer, and a bunch of guys on last season's team who now have bigger roles on this season's team. It's Jalen Wilson, DeJuan Harris, Grady Dick, Kevin McCullough, and a bunch of guys who didn't matter last season who are mattering now, among them KJ Adams. DeJuan Harris and Jalen Wilson are the only 2 players in Kansas's program who were on Kansas's team last season and averaged more than 2.1 points per game. For Bill Self to be able to do this in this way speaks to his ability to everything, develop players within his program, recruit, and get the most out of his roster basically every year. He is on his way to winning what will be a 17th Big 12 title in a 20-year span. That's, again, it's why he is widely regarded as the best coach in college basketball.
Here's what's gonna happen. Okay, right now, Kansas, this is a joke, man. This is a joke. It's got 14 quad 1 wins, and we're not even to March. That's the record. There's never been a team with more than 14. Kansas is gonna finish minimum 17. It's 20 on the table. 20 quad 1 wins. This is not what again. What number 1 overall seed? So in play, and I might need to be talked out of it in a week's time at this point, because the top end of the resume is fantasy land stuff, and they're doing it in the toughest conference in the country, and they lost like 65% of their production from last season from a national championship winning team. It is unreal. So I'm glad you brought it up. I know Kansas fans are all too dialed into this, and they are not taking it for granted. I do feel like a segment of our audience and college basketball fans, they're just like, yeah, it's Kansas. They're good again. This is outrageous what they are doing. And no, and the ironic part is, yes, Kansas ranks number 1, as it should, in strength of record, a results-based metric. It is number 1 in that metric. Bama is 2. But in the predictives, not so much. And some of that is because because the league is so good, and it's taken losses, and it's lost to teams that rank below Kansas in those metrics. It's 7th at KenPom, 8 in BPI, 3rd in Sagarin, 6th in the net. So it's still top end. but it's not one across the board. But from a resume perspective, just incredible, which leads me to the fact that we have gotten to this point with all of that stuff on Kansas's dossier, and you look at the Big 12 standings, Texas is still right there, man.
Yep.
11-4, and I thought it was a really important win on Tuesday. A no-nonsense 72-54 win over Iowa State, which isn't fully healthy. Someone said this along the way, and I forget who mentioned it, but I completely nodded my head when I heard it. Iowa State's one of those teams, it's ready to get the hell out of Big 12 play and get to the tournament. And it's not coming for the next 2.5 weeks, but it has managed 3 wins in the past month, and it is a good team. But maybe there is something about the way TJ runs his stuff. The quality of teams are so good, it just makes it that much of a steeper climb. It needs to play non-Big 12 teams. It does have a little bit of a respite in theory coming up. Oklahoma going to go out to Ames, and then West Virginia will go out to Ames before Iowa State's got to finish on the road against Baylor. But Texas gets an important win to stay even in the Big 12 race. Now it's got to go to Baylor, to TCU, which is why I recently said I still think that when Kansas and Texas play in Austin on March 4th to wrap the regular season, I think Texas's spot there at best will be to get a win over Kansas to tie the Jayhawks in the league standings.
Kansas over TCU on Monday night was obviously massive. Texas A&M over Tennessee on Tuesday night, obviously massive. I think you could argue the biggest win anybody's got over the past couple of days is Marquette winning at Creighton, because the Golden Eagles are now 14-3 in the Big East. That's 2 games ahead of Providence, Creighton, Xavier in the win column of the league standings, 1 game better than Providence in the loss column of the league standings. And with that victory and this advantage in the standings, it's now set up for Marquette, because the next 3 games at home against DePaul on Saturday, at Butler next Tuesday, at home against St. John's on March 4th. That's 3 sub-95 net teams. Put simply, Marquette hasn't lost to a sub-95 net team all season. They haven't lost to a team like they're going to play in these final 3 regular season games all season. KenPom has them favored by at least 8 points in all 3 games. As long as they don't screw this up and take a loss unlike any other loss they've taken this season, Marquette's going to be your outright Big East champions after being picked 9th in the preseason Big East poll after starting 76th at KenPom. They're now up to a number 11, and it's why not only is Shaka Smart going to be the obvious Big East Coach of the Year, yeah, you're starting to have a National Coach of the Year race that seems a little wide open. Bill Self is a part of it. Shaka Smart is a part of it. Matt Painter is a part of it. I think Chris Collins has probably got to be a part of it somewhere. There's a lot of good candidates now, but Shaka Smart loses 3 of his top 4 scorers, is picked 9th in the Big East, and might win an outright Big East title. That's a good place to start your argument.
John Fanta interviewed Shaka for the Big East Digital Network after this game, and Shaka gave a good little anecdote. So a year ago in this game, Marquette at Creighton, Marquette was up late and it fumbled away the game, and Shaka benched Tyler Kolek down the stretch. And then Shaka revealed on Tuesday that they had like a real heart-to-heart, kind of vent it all out moment with each other in a healthy way. And Shaka said after that, he determined internally there were going to be no more games in which Tyler Kolek was going to be on the bench in a close game late. That would not happen. It hasn't happened. And then what did we see on Tuesday night? Kolek hits the winning basket. His bucket with 28 seconds to go was proved to be the difference there. And he was a major factor. Marquette also at one point was able to keep Creighton scoreless for like 6 minutes. It went on a 13-0 run. It just swung the hammer right back at Creighton in the second half. And Marquette's been known for its defense. It's been number 1 or number 2 in points per possession for most of the past 2+ months. And it was really the defense that came out kind of connecting Marquette and Kansas in a couple of ways. I'll also say that both teams are proving to win in a litany of styles and fights, which is a very good sign if you're a fan of either of those teams, because you don't know what kind of opponents you're going to get in the first round, second round. If you get to the second week in the tournament, you want to have more than 1 or 2 default settings, if you will. And I think Marquette showed a little bit more with all that. Creighton fans, I know you're a little bit up in arms over the ending of the game. I'm just not here for it. I'm not saying you're necessarily wrong. It was a well-played game. It's in your barn. Marquette played well in the second half. You know it did. I know you might have wanted a whistle there and not wanted a whistle there. I get all of that, but just tip your cap and move on. Like, you still can win the Big East tournament. That's the wonderful thing about the Big East this season. I cannot wait to go to this tournament, man, because 5 teams could viably win it. And then even Nova winning at Xavier, until this week, none of the top 4 teams in the conference had lost a home game in league play. And then lo and behold, we wind up seeing it happen with Marquette knocking off Creighton, and then Nova, which never plays spoiler in the new Big East. It goes in and handles a shorthanded, not handles, but winds up escaping and winning over a Xavier team that isn't at full strength there. So some Big East is worth a watch every single time, and we'll get to this in just a second when we preview the night. But there's yet another one. That's awaiting us here on Wednesday. I think that pretty much covers most of what we needed to get to on Tuesday. There was some other stuff, but
one last note. I'll deliver it to you in the form of a trivia time.
Right.
Sometimes I just sit around and I sort data at barttorvik.com. If you do it for the past month, so let's say January 22nd to February 22nd, who's the best team in the country?
A&M.
It's not true. A&M is 6th.
I know. It's Houston.
Not true. Houston is 15th.
You keep moving the goalposts on me. 15th. Okay.
That surprised me too.
Tonight.
That surprised me too.
It's got to be Marquette.
Marquette is. Where are you, Marquette? Oh man,
number 1.
Marquette apparently stinks. It turns out Marquette stinks. over the past month, Marquette 38th.
Okay, well, that, you know what that means. You're picking A&M no matter what, and you're picking Marquette to lose. You've hated Marquette for years, so this is where this is going to. Is that basically what you're getting to here? You're going to pick against Marquette in the first round of the tournament?
I don't think I can do that. I wouldn't feel comfortable doing that.
Okay. Past month, who else I got? Did I say Purdue? It's not Purdue, so that's not my guess.
Is 5th. Purdue is 5th.
It's geez, man. Creighton? I don't know. Like, what are you guiding me to? I have no idea.
Creighton is 13th. If I look tired, who kept me up late last night?
San Diego State?
My Aztecs are 7-1 in the past month and rated as the number 1 team in the country, according to barttorvik.com.
All right, Aztecs. No one's going to give that program the credit it should until it gets some wins in the tournament. But in my power rankings on Thursday, how about this? I started assembling the list last night. Aztecs are going to be somewhere in the top 13 or 14. That's all I can tell you.
They are now 13-2 in the Mountain West Conference. They've got a 1-game lead in the loss column over Boise State. And this is going to be a fun race to close things because San Diego State, 3 games left in the regular season. Next 2 at New Mexico, then at Boise State, and then they close at home against Wyoming. So this Mountain West Conference race, it might be settled in Boise next Tuesday on February 28th. But at this moment, San Diego State, whether it is an outright Mountain West Conference champ or shares the Mountain West Conference title, San Diego State is rating as the best team in the Mountain West Conference. Let's look ahead to the next 2 nights real quick. On Wednesday night, got a busy schedule. Number 20, Providence at number 18, UConn. Number 2, Alabama at South Carolina. Kentucky at Florida. Wake Forest at NC State. North Carolina at Notre Dame. Iowa at Wisconsin. New Mexico at Boise State. On CBS Sports Network tonight, we got a doubleheader. It's Dayton at UMass and St. John's at Georgetown. A game between 2 schools that should probably try to hire Rick Pitino, which brings me to your latest column at cbssports.com. I already checked it out. 10-minute read.
Is it that long?
It's what it said. 10-minute read.
I don't mind. That's taking you 7 minutes tops.
Yeah. I can deal with a 10-minute read. I can deal with a 10-minute read. So you went and spent some time with Rick last Friday, I gather. What can people expect to see if they decide to spend 10 minutes reading stuff you wrote?
In fact, as you texted me and Nada that Cody in Kentucky was saying there's more of us, I'm literally listening to Rick Pitino hold court in his office and was doing all that kind of stuff. So I saw it after the fact, but it was a surreal moment, I guess, for the podcast there. All right, so I went down to New Rochelle, checked out a little Iona Manhattan action, and Pitino let me be a fly on the wall in the locker room before and after the game. I talked to him for about 30 minutes before the game, and I wanted to just basically, I'm close enough. I just wanted to get a temp check on how things are going at Iona these days and how Patino's doing, because a few days before the season started, the IRP said, "You're good. You're off the hook. No punishments. We cleared you." There was actually a little bit of stuff on that I wound up not putting in the column because it just wasn't relevant to the column overall. But safe to say, Patino still has a great affection for his players. As for the institution, he'll vouch for how much they care about the players. Not so rosy feelings about Louisville these days from Mr. Patino. That's no surprise there. Perhaps he'll expound on that on the record in the weeks or years to come. I wanted to know if he's really going to finish this out, like how close he was to retirement. And let's not beat around the bush here. We fully expect Georgetown to open. St. John's is in flux. There will be other jobs as well that could open. And is he going to leave or is he going to stay? Because he has said, and Patino, listen, his word is not the most reliable. He has said one thing and then done another. We know this to be the case, but you cannot deny, and I will give Parrish his full due here. In fact, I'm going to pause my thought and just let you just try and keep it under 30 seconds, please.
Mm-hmm.
I'm pretty sure that in most of the thick of all of this noise surrounding Patino, you were like, I'd hire Rick Pitino. So if you want, just real quick, then send it on back over to me. But I think you've been proven. I need a GPI was right button. I don't have that yet. Not many opportunities for it, frankly, but you were right.
What disqualifies Rick Pitino from being a major college Division I basketball coach, given the other people who are major college Division I basketball coaches? That's always been my question. Why can, and I won't even throw the other names out there, but you know who I'm thinking of. There's a list of guys. Why can those guys coach at the high major level, but Rick Pitino is disqualified? Like I've always said, if you are a university president, chancellor, athletic director, whomever, who just isn't comfortable employing Rick Pitino, it's fine with me. You don't even have to convince me of it. I understand. I get it. I'm just saying there's nothing, literally nothing, that disqualifies Rick Pitino from being a major college basketball coach again. And if I were a university president at a place like St. John's or Georgetown, absolutely, I would do it.
If you are wondering where UConn legend Talik Brown is these days, he makes a cameo in the story. He is on Pitino's staff at Iona and featured near the top of it. Pitino said both things. He said, I'll give you the direct quote here. Let's see. He said he's more excited about coaching now than ever before. Part of that's because he knows his window is closing. He told me, I want to coach for 6 more years. He said, what else do we got in here? And please do read the story. We'll put this in a link. He said, if he left, it would have to be someplace really, really special with the type of president that I have here. Now it's easy. I got exonerated by the NCAA. They said you didn't do anything. Now it's easy to hire me. But Seamus Carey didn't have that guarantee. Seamus Carey is the president of Iona, who flew across the ocean and met Pitino in Madrid, offered him the job. Pitino, I didn't put this in there, but Pitino is basically like, he wasn't going to take the job, but he was ready to just explain himself. And then the president was like, you don't need to explain yourself to me. I've done all my vetting. And that was really what changed Pitino's mind. And then apparently, they had to hustle out of there and catch because the pandemic was about to hit. Like, you'll remember, I think it was the day after the tournament got canceled that Pitino getting the job wound up breaking. I think there's a chance he might stay. Now, I'm not saying he will. I am not saying he will, but he says he gave me both. He knows exactly what he's doing, and I end the story on that as well. He said, I have no idea what the answer is about where I'll be or what I'll do. I know I love the place. I know I'm 8 minutes away. His house is 8 minutes away from Iona's campus there. I do know there's certain places, and there's 20 or 30 states where I don't want to live. He said where he lived in the past didn't mean as much to him then as it does now. He also said, I know everybody here and I know what they are. I don't need money. I don't need fame. I don't need to move up the ladder of success. I know what I have. I know the devil here. Sometimes people don't know the devil. And to that, and he was explaining, a job could court me that's a power conference job, and there might be a lot of enticements there. but Pitino 70. He's coached around the world, around the country, pro, college, EuroLeague, FIBA, you name it, right? And he's aware of the fact that he could take a job, and then the reality of that job on a day-to-day basis, 3 to 6 months after he gets it, might not be exactly what was pitched. So he has some hesitancy there. He said, I don't see it happening. I'm really tied in these kids, and they came because of me. That was the case for him to stay. The case for him to go, he did negotiate his contract buyout to $0. It was $5 million a year ago, and Maryland made a call on him, and it did not pursue. Rhode Island and Holy Cross, as the story details, also inquired about hiring Rick Pitino. Now the buyout is $0. He's on the third year of a 5-year deal, and he does explain in the story about why being in a one-bid league is an annoying factor to all of this. I am not going to predict what Rick Pitino is going to do. What I am going to predict is he no longer has any NCAA baggage hanging over his head. His name is not toxic now to the level it was many years ago. And if and when Georgetown opens, that to me is the best potential job. There's another job that I'm not going to bring up that Pitino did not bring up to me, but that I am privately thinking would be one that he would entertain if it came open. That would compete with the Georgetown job, but the Georgetown one is going to be out there, and he's going to be the overwhelming candidate, in my opinion, connected to that job. Doesn't mean he will get it. Doesn't mean Georgetown wants him, but it's, I think, going to be an interesting couple of months here for Rick Pitino as the coaching carousel gets moving in a few weeks.
I am going to predict what Rick Pitino is going to do.
All right, let's do it. Let's dangerous game, but go ahead.
He'll coach somewhere else next season.
Okay.
I don't know where, but somebody's going to offer him a job that he's not going to turn down.
He did say he will never coach in the Big Ten because Minnesota fired his son. So any I don't even know if any Big Ten job's going to open, but he's never coaching in the Big Ten, he said.
That's a wild stance to take.
I'm like,
the whole league.
What does Nebraska have to do with Richard getting fired?
Yeah,
but that's what he said.
Like, let's think about, okay, what Big Ten job could open? I mean, Minnesota could open.
Someone in the comments is saying the job that I won't say here is Louisville. That's not the job. Just so
No. They can't.
And it's not Kentucky either. It's not those jobs.
Yeah, I don't know. Yeah, I don't think any. I think you're right. I don't think any Big Ten job's going to open.
He was big time on, like, I'm not looking to go live in a place I don't want to live. I'm 70 years old. He's 8 minutes away. He lives on a ritzy golf course, and the lack of commute is a major thing. So anyway, that was it's potentially the St. John's. The St. John's Georgetown is the Rick Pitino special here on Wednesday night. Loser gets Rick Pitino. Maybe we'll see. I would say, objectively speaking, on this, kind of inside the business, this is no surprise, but like, Georgetown far outpaces St. John's in terms of job appeal for many people. And I would believe that even though St. John's is closer to where Pitino's home base is right now, I would think that Pitino would hold Georgetown in higher esteem than St. John's, but I don't have that 100% on the record as fact, but that would be me reading into the situation.
You know, he had a home for a long time down in Miami. Might still have it. If Jim Larinaga were to retire, and I'm not suggesting that he would or should. I mean, he's operating one of the best basketball teams in the country right now. Like, he got a top 15 team right now. But if that Miami job would open,
that's not a bad one. I think, I did not talk to Rick about this. I want to say someone mentioned it to me. I think Rick had someone in Rick's family went to Georgetown or something. I don't know. There's also some sort of connection there. And Georgetown fans they're putting, have you seen the stuff they're putting up around campus? I think they're putting like the two shaded Pitino image with hope under it, and it's like all over. Like, they're just building these murals around there.
I would do it. I don't know if Georgetown's going to do it. I don't know if St. John's is going to do it, but I do feel confident that somebody with a job that Rick will take is going to offer Rick that job, and he'll coach somewhere else in the 2023-24 season. Hey, if it happens, we'll talk about it then. On Thursday night, Northwestern at Illinois, UCLA at Utah, Penn State at Ohio State, Michigan at Rutgers, USC at Colorado. Not a lot of great stuff there, but, you know, those are games that are going to be played on Thursday night.
My man knows how to sell it. Not a lot of great stuff there, but those are games that are going to be played on Thursday. My best game of Thursday, I'd say, is Northwestern at Illinois. Although Michigan, if it won at Rutgers, it would get into the conversation. Kind of like on Wednesday. You mentioned it, but if Wake wins at NC State, let's maybe take a little bit of a closer look at what Steve Forbes has cooking there. But they got to win at NC State. That's a 9 Eastern tip on Wednesday. Providence at UConn, by far the best game of the night, I think. 6:30 Eastern in Gamble. I had a few people asking in the
Now,
Florida.
this is one of those where I don't know if I lost Norlander or if he lost me.
No,
I'm here. I'm here. You got me? It was me. I'm back. You got me?
It's nice to have you back.
I'm here.
I see you're
Yeah, it was
podcasting
me.
today.
It was me. What do you want? Like, it just dropped out. Yeah,
I see you're podcasting today from Bloomington or perhaps Knoxville.
that's exactly.
Hey,
I don't know when you lost
Tennessee
me.
fans, if you're out there, would you please tweet me? I haven't heard from you in days.
No, please don't.
Please, like, let me know you're okay. You know how when there's an earthquake or a storm or tornado, and on Facebook you can check yourself as safe. If you're a Tennessee fan out there, just like check in with me. Let me know you're okay. I haven't heard from any of you in days, so I'm assuming it's not just because I'm just wondering if you're okay. So
all right,
let me know. Just tweet me and be like, GP, we're okay. We just want to let you know we're safe. I'm worried about them.
Did you? Okay, I'm done after this. Did you hear me talk about Wake? Was I there for the Wake stuff?
But Wake's got to beat NC State. I think that's what you said. Wake's got.
Yeah,
that's a hard place to set the bar. You must go to Raleigh and beat Turquavion.
It's tough, but if they do, we take a little bit closer look. Kentucky is it's still in the tournament with the loss, but it's at Florida. Just keep an eye. And then UNC plays at Notre Dame. I had to talk about that on HQ earlier this morning. UNC cannot lose this game. UNC at Notre Dame, 9 Eastern, ESPN. Just a game with the utmost urgency on Wednesday night. But Providence, UConn, that is by far your best watch. That's all I got. Let's get out of here.
Just got a text message. Sounds like I'm going to go on Inside Edition to talk about Brandon Miller.
I didn't even realize that show was still around.
Oh, okay. You kidding me?
I'm not dialed into that. I don't know.
I've always wanted to be on Inside Edition. I'm looking forward to this.
Okay.
Shouts to Devin Downey. I thought I'd be on Inside Edition for other reasons. Turns out
that's going in the no context preview. Inside Edition, huh?
Turns out I need a Brandon Miller to take a gun to the scene of an altercation for me to get on Inside Edition. You never know how this world's going to work, you know?
You once found yourself on the Weather Channel. So
I was on the Weather Channel. I thought in that moment, I thought I was a rising star in the field of meteorology, but just sort of plateaued after that.
Was outrageous. I don't even. Why the hell did you wind up on the Weather Channel?
If I remember correctly, I'll give you the quick story. There was a guy who was a producer for a sports talk radio network or station. And, you know, he would have me on every once in a while. Like, hey, GP, can you come on and talk college basketball? And he subsequently took a job at the Weather Channel. And there was going to be outrageous flooding or storms or something in Memphis. And I was literally the only person he could think of in Memphis. And they wanted somebody to speak from Memphis in advance of these storms. And so it was like, and now we're joined by Gary Parrish from Memphis to talk about storms.
This is the stupidest thing ever. This is like 2016 or something.
I was on the Weather Channel discussing storms. That's a fact.
Your viability as a random guest on non-sports dominated shows has increased in the years since. Check GP apparently on tonight's edition of Inside Edition, whenever that airs in your local area.
Shouts to David Downey. Shouts to Chester, South Carolina. Shouts to Huck. Shouts to Larnell. Thank you once again for listening to the Ion College Basketball Podcast. If you're not subscribed, please go subscribe anywhere you subscribe to podcasts, including Apple Podcasts, Spotify. 5 stars, nice review at Apple. Type some words. There's more of us than there are of them. That needs to be reflected in the comment. If you've ever watched Inside Edition, you know there's more of us than there are of them. Basically, everybody on Inside Edition, one of us. I feel like I'm going home. It's where I belong on Inside Edition. If you're not subscribed to the YouTube channel, do that, and we're going to talk to you again at the very latest on Friday morning. Till then, take care.